What if I told you that the diplomatic gloves are officially off? There's a new bill that is making its way through the US Congress that isn't just a warning shot for South Africa. It is actually a threat. We are talking about a move that could completely shatter decades-long alliance. So let's break it down how the relations between Washington and Pretoria got this bad. What does it mean for both countries? And why their entire partnership is hanging by a thread? Dumela Kazi, welcome back to the Cafe. If you're new here, welcome. And if you are returning, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. I know I've been gone for the longest time. It was for a very important cause. And I don't feel like it is important for me to share it on this video, but we just need to talk about this mess because it is necessary for us as South African and for the people in the African continent, because obviously we are housing a lot of Africans in South Africa. So let's get into this video. So you might be asking yourself, what's causing all this drama? It is actually a piece of legislation with a very long name. It is called the US-South Africa Bilateral Relations Review Act. This isn't just some routine paperwork. The bill just passed a major hurdle in the House Foreign Affairs Committee and calls for top to bottom review of entire US-South Africa relationship. But there's a little kicker. It goes way beyond a simple review. The bill is designed to pinpoint senior South African government and ruling party officials who could be slapped with personal sanctions. Sponsored by the Republican lawmakers, it accuses South Africa of actively working against US interests abroad. Now, it's heading to the full House for votes, and while it still has a long way to go before becoming law, the message couldn't be clearer. Washington's patience, actually, it is running out. They don't have any patience when it comes to South Africa. At least that's what we feel with the whole thing. It's pretty wild to see this happening, especially when you look at the history. This standoff is a complete 180 from where the relationship used to be. After apartheid, the US was the biggest cheerleader of South Africa because they were sharing pretty much almost the same, especially when it comes to democracy, whether it is rights, whether it is supporting them through or working with the United States or South Africa through security and health-wise. They shared almost every single thing when it comes to human rights. A big part of the partnership was a trade deal called the African Growth and Opportunity Act. You've probably heard it as AGOA. We've been talking about AGOA for so many times, I think, on this channel. And that was the most important catalyst between the relationship, within the relationship between the United States and South Africa. It's a huge deal because it lets South African products enter the massive US market without tariffs. This agreement has been the bedrock of their economic ties, propping up thousands of jobs in South Africa's car and farming industries. And now the entire foundation is starting to crumble. That's what I'm gonna say. So you might be asking, how did things got so bad? Because that's what I'm asking myself each and every time I hear Donald Trump or his administration is talking about South Africa. The tension has been building up over few key foreign policies or clashes. First up, South Africa's friendship with America's rivals. Washington is not happy about Pretoria's cozy relationship with Russia and China. Mind you, Russia and China are South Africa's partners within the BRICS. If you don't know what BRICS is, I don't know what rock you're living under, but I'm going to quickly summarize it to you. BRICS is emerging countries that came together to form this big this big organization that if they do it right, they might see in the future kicking out the actual dollar as their trade currency. And that is a threat when it comes to kicking out the dollar, because obviously it will have bad implications when it comes to the United States. And that's what the United States doesn't really like South Africa to do. And on top of that, China did not bow down for United States. And it makes the whole relationship to be even more worse than we thought. The US bill specifically calls out South Africa for holding joint military drills with those two countries, as I mentioned, Russia and China, which the US sees as a direct poke in the eye, because obviously USA is a center of attraction. They don't want any country to join forces with their own enemy. So if you join forces with the US enemy, then you are the number one enemy yourself. And also there's this Israel and Palestine conflict. And South Africa is very vocal when it comes to that conflict, very vocal calling out Israel. And they even took Israel to the ICJ. You remember that one last year? They took Israel to ICJ. And obviously, when that happens, the United States accused South Africa of sleeping or of supporting Hamas of the Palestine side. And obviously, Israel is an ally, one of the biggest allies of the United States. And what you do to Israel, it feels like you're doing it to the United States. And finally, there are general feelings in Washington that South Africa has dropped its neutral stance to actively work against US interests. This hasn't been helped by some really sharp words from both sides, between South Africa, obviously, as well as the United States over the years, including former President Trump's accusations of anti-white racism in South Africa, and the expulsion of the South African ambassador from the United States in March 2025. Hell, this was dramatic. This was the biggest drama that we've ever seen. But anyway, we can continue. The consequences, as I said, they might be dire. We don't know. Actually, we don't know how the consequences would be, but we need to at least try to elaborate what could be the consequences. The consequences here could be massive. If this sanction bill actually becomes law, we could see top South African official hit with financial penalties and travel bans. And this will cause a nightmare for them to travel abroad or to make business abroad. If these sanctions could be effective as soon as possible, it would be a nightmare for them to do business internationally or even travel for leisure internationally. Beyond individual sanctions, the broader economic relations is on the line. South Africa is staring down the barrel of potential 30% tariff on everything it sells to the US. And what could be even worse, losing its spots in that AGOA trade deal. AGOA is up for renewal now in 2025 at the end of the year. And obviously South Africa had a chance, or South Africa had an opportunity, to run with this before the renewal at the end of the year. So I don't know if it will happen, because if I'm not mistaken, the renewal is supposed to happen in September or November, between those two. So South Africa had the longer period to actually sign the deal into motion once again. But obviously, we know that we are dangling. Everything is dangling, and we've got this 30% right close to our faces. That's the United States might slap South Africa, right? That would happen. That might happen. We don't know if it will really happen. So losing that duty-free access would be a hammer blow to South Africa's economy, which really depends on selling its goods to the United States. Things are moving fast, and I know sometimes you're not going to be able to grasp each and everything that is coming out. That's when I'm coming in. So what you need to do right now, you actually know what you need to do. Please do make sure you don't leave without subscribing and turn on your notifications so that you will see videos like this, or an update actually when it comes to the topic that we are talking about right now. Let's conclude this conversation because it needs a conclusion really, because we cannot really finish each and everything when it comes to South Africa and the United States relations. For its part, South Africa's government says it's committed to diplomacy to smooth things over. President Cyril Ramaphosa has stressed that talks are ongoing. Meanwhile, in Washington, this bill isn't without its critics, with top Democrats arguing that talking it out is much better than giving us sanctions or giving the political party sanctions in South Africa, obviously. But right now, the momentum seems to be with those who wants to take the hard way, which is the sanction. What we are seeing is a real-life stress test of historic friendship. The big question is, can this be fixed? Or are we watching the end of an era, US-South Africa relations? So the next few months are going to be very critical, and I want you to be here with me to witness what could happen. What will happen between South Africa and the United States? But anyway, we cannot finish everything that we are talking about when it comes to South Africa and the United States. They have been having decades of friendship or relations as two countries, and there's a lot to unpack, and unfortunately we cannot unpack it in one video. Now we need something new that will trigger us to unpack it even more. But you need to subscribe and you need to turn on your notification bell. I also would like to hear your thoughts on my comment section. I will see you on my next upload. Have a fantastic one. Peace.